So good morning, everyone. My name is Lorraine Cunningham, and I'd like to welcome you to TransLink's September 2023 board meeting. Thank you all for joining us virtually today. At this time, I'd like to call today's meeting to order. I'd like to start by saying that we respect the Indigenous nations within Metro Vancouver and acknowledge all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people for their continued resilience, sustainable stewardship, and as active members of the community for generations to come. We recognize that in planning and managing the region's transportation system, we have a role to play in supporting reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. September 30th is National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, and also known as Orange Shirt Day. This is a day of observation to recognize and honor the resiliency of residential school survivors and pay respect to the children who never returned home to their families. It is an opportunity to learn and reflect on the lasting impacts of the residential school system on Indigenous peoples in Canada. I plan to take time to pause and reflect this week to create space to learn and recognize that we all have an important role to play in actively supporting reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, and I encourage all of you to join me. Before we begin this meeting, I'd like to acknowledge Chief Officer Dave Jones, who is retiring after 37 years of policing, including the last 4 years as Chief of Transit Police. Over his career, Chief Jones made a truly positive impact on policing in Metro Vancouver, and we're so grateful for his service and dedication to the TransLink enterprise over the years. With his retirement, I would like to welcome Deputy Chief Officer Suzanne Muir, who will step into the role of Chief Officer of Transit Police on October 1st. Deputy Chief Officer Muir possesses a wealth of experience in leadership and law enforcement from her time at the Vancouver Police Department and Transit Police, and we look forward to working with her as we advance safety and security for all customers and employees. Before we proceed, are there any items in the consent agenda that a director wishes to remove from consent for discussion? So hearing none, I'd like to move on now and introduce Harpinder Sandhu, who will present today's safety moment. Harpinder?
Good, right? Yes, so for today's safety minute, I like to focus on mental health in the workplace, for example. So, and most organizations now, as we recognize the mental well-being of our workers and our coworkers and our communities, we do see that most organizations are recognizing the importance of this. I think the major things that people need to be aware of are their policies, processes, and resources that are available. And what I'd like to focus on is primarily to promote personal awareness. So as you progress through your careers and progress through your various organizations that you're part of, that you're personally aware of how you are reacting in the workplace to the various issues that may come up. One of the things is to track your own progress and also change in your workplace and your working conditions and your personal stress. But primarily, it's really about preventing illness or injury. And so if you have an intentional awareness of these issues, then you can work alongside those that are there to support you. Thank you.
Harpinder, thank you very much for that. So I'm going to now ask us to move on to the next item on our agenda, which is our delegations. We have 3 individuals that have asked to speak to the board today. And if I can ask Albert Milenius to be our first speaker. And Albert, I think I see your phone is on the line. I just want to note that we're going to have a chime ring at 4 minutes. And that gives you enough time to plan to conclude your remarks, because you have assigned 5 minutes for your presentation. Okay, so Albert, if you'd like to proceed. Albert, are you there?
Albert, if you could take yourself off mute.
Albert, we still can't hear you. So maybe we should go to the next speaker. Is Robin with us yet, Salima? And then we can let Albert get his technology sorted out.
Yes, there's Robin.
Okay, Robin, welcome.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, we can. So
Good.
thank you, Robert. So, Robin, sorry, if you would, we're gonna sound a
Yep, I heard
chime
you.
at 4 minutes. Okay, perfect. Okay, so the floor is yours, sir.
Okay. Well, this is to follow up on the concern I raised at your June 22nd board meeting about ministry passes for persons with disabilities. I received a July 5th letter from an Olga, Vice President Financial Services, and it sort of repeated what I'd already been told using different verbiage. The sort of pith and substance is that program, meaning ministry passes and concession passes, are generally prone to a higher degree of misuse. And that this is why they have to be identified by name and birth date, having those pieces of personal information on there, as opposed to the general transit using public who are allowed to ride anonymously. So I guess I see this sort of as a negative stereotype that disabled people are dishonest and will do inappropriate things with their passes. And my understanding sort of contemporary, I guess we'd say, sociology is when we see disparate outcomes or behaviors like that in the community, we don't really blame the minority or the disadvantaged group. We go a bit further and we look for, well, why is it that people with disabilities would be, I don't know what, the letter doesn't outline what exactly misuse means, but presumably this is selling the pass or renting it or something. Well, people with disabilities, a single person on assistance from the ministry gets $1,483.50 per month, which isn't enough to live in the community. So I think a reasonable person could see, oh, well, that's probably why there's this misuse. And to further penalize persons with disabilities by making them have this pass that sort of leaks personal information, we don't see that as appropriate. And it does make our family member who's disabled feel singled out. I also got a bit more clarity on how the program is structured through a Freedom of Information request. And I'm a little sort of perturbed that I had to go to Freedom of Information because I was able to get the BC Bus Pass contribution agreement, which is 56 pages of lawyer jive, I guess you could call it. And it's a lot to read. But so basically the reason the passes have the name and last 2 years, the year of birth, is because that's a requirement of the agreement. Now, of course, the agreement doesn't specify why the agreement says that, whether it was TransLink that negotiated for this or the Crown that negotiated for this. And it does specify that the pass has to have that, but I see this sort of as a minimum standard of what TransLink has to provide. It defines what the benefits will be for people with disabilities, but it doesn't say that TransLink is prohibited from doing more. This simply specifies how they get paid by the government, essentially, for providing these services. So I guess in terms of what TransLink could do, there's no reason other than the agreement's framework for compensation that TransLink could not provide a normal Blue Compass card or the novelty passes loaded with a monthly pass to persons with disabilities. And of course, there's the cost issue. But what I also didn't see in this letter from Olga is any sort of administrative balancing of the rights of persons with disabilities to access the physical environment via transportation and this fare evasion or fare misuse problem. There doesn't seem to have been a balancing in anything I've read where we're sort of looking, well, here's the problem, and then is this more important than a disabled person's right to privacy, for example, or their right to not be treated in a discriminatory manner by being singled out by having a pass that looks different from able-bodied people, or sorry, non-disabled people, I guess I should say. So I guess that's what I'm thinking about at this point, and I'm just going to reiterate that it's sort of disappointing I had to go to Freedom of Information to get this document rather than it being cited in the correspondence I received, because it sort of does seem to outline why this is being done. And so I guess from that point, I'm renewing my concern that disabled people should be able to use the novelty passes and should be able to have a compass card that looks just like anyone else's. And I think that's really quite reasonable. I don't think that's some pie in the sky dream. You know, I think that the other thing is how many disabled people were consulted about how this pass should be designed. Did disabled people say, we want a pass that singles us out so that if the transit police officer thinks maybe we're fare evading, we have to give them our name and birth date prior to the interaction going that far, you know, because the constable stops you. They have to have some reason to do that. And if you don't have a disability pass, you don't have to identify yourself unless you feel you've done something wrong, you know, but a disabled person will have to give their name and birth date in advance of any articulation of, well, I think you're fare evading. So it just seems like it's a reverse onus test that's really quite inappropriate. And I guess I've stated my case here. So I thank you for your time, and I look forward to what might be done about this so that persons with disabilities can ride the transit system anonymously like everyone else does, if they choose to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robin, for bringing this to our attention. And I'm sure there'll be more to come on this. So appreciate your feedback.
Thank you. May I just expect a response of some sort? You said last time that I might. Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. All right, so we're going to go now back to Albert. I think that he hopefully has worked out his technology issue. So Albert, are you there and can you hear us?
Yeah, I finally found out how to unmute.
Oh, great. Okay.
Would you like me to speak now, or
yes,
do I wait?
that would be great. So Albert, you have the floor and you have 5 minutes.
Okay.
And I'll
my
give
name
you
is
a
Albert.
heads up.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
My name is Albert Melanius. I've been a handy-dart driver since the very beginning. This is my comment on the present movement to take handy-dart in-house. The most important point is that handy-dart must have autonomy to do its job. Handy-dart is the finishing touch that makes transit accessible to all. It must have the distance and perspective to identify the gaps in the other forms of transit to cover them. All forms of transit for people with disabilities are being improved, but what is not yet done can be done by handy-dart. That's pretty much our job description. Taxis are useful, but taxis are not dedicated. They cannot be. To make a living, they must chase many types of trips, including dial a bottle where the tip might be as big as the fare. However, the present rivalry between handy-dart and taxis is best solved by cooperative measures. Is TransDev up to it? My list of objections. First, the type of in-house being proposed is undefined and leads in unknown directions. Second, the new employer, TransDev, has not yet been tested. We have yet to see if they can improve the system. Finally, and most importantly, I repeat, to provide good service, handy-dart must maintain a high degree of autonomy. Even now, handy-dart is burdened with fixed-route able-bodied bias and planning. Our primary measure should not be high stats, but high assistance trips, such as wheelchairs that take a long time to load, or blind people who cannot be left alone till they're at a landmark they recognize, or people who might wander away if left at the door unattended. Moving in-house without the autonomy to fill the gaps would make things worse. Take the time to get it right. Don't rush into this. And that is the end of my presentation.
Albert, thank you very much for that. Appreciate you coming and taking the time.
Is there some way I can listen to the rest of the meeting? Is it on YouTube?
Yes, it is. Salima, can you provide the address for Albert? Or the link?
Yeah, we'll get that
Okay.
to him. It is on YouTube.
Yeah. There's a TransLink YouTube channel that you can go on to, Albert.
Oh, that's one of the links in the paper, right?
Yeah.
In the message. Yeah, I'll go to the link. Thanks a lot. Thank you
Okay,
very much.
okay, thanks very much. All right, our third and final presenter is Nathan Devadovich. And Nathan, are you here with us? Salima, have we seen Nathan yet today?
We have.
Okay.
There we go. I think he's off mute now.
Okay. Nathan, welcome.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome. So
Yeah, do you hear me?
We can hear you and the floor is yours, so you can start
Okay.
anytime you
Okay,
like.
thank you very much,
Thank you.
dear members of the board. Well, I'm glad you celebrated 75 years of trolley bus service last month, there are many problems that are not should be dealt with the board. We need to produce a plan for expansion of the trolley bus system. The GVRD had such a plan of extending the buses into North Burnaby, but this was never implemented. Seattle and San Francisco are expanding their trolley overhead system, and we should follow. $1 million per year has been wasted since 2006 of routing buses in and out of the Vancouver Transit Center when the bus garage was closed at Oak Ridge. This is $17 million that has been wasted since 2006. This could have been used to improve service. We need to buy articulated trolley buses instead of the 188 standard buses that were approved by Metro Vancouver on your direction. For example, we need articulated buses on the number 19 to Stanley Park. This is the most used park in the Lower Mainland with 18 million visits a year. And we need the return of the number 52 bus around the Stanley Park. But with ridership increases over the next 25 years, all trolley buses should be articulated as they carry 25% of the total regional ridership with only 15% of the fleet. Please keep the old destination signs on the trolley buses and on the bus stops. They served us well for the last 75 years. New signs by new people at your various departments are confusing for many riders and visitors. Why are your financial statements for the period ending June 30th, 2023 not available? Why it's not on your agenda today? You have millions of dollars in surpluses that could be reallocated like it was done recently in Toronto to return bus service to the pre-COVID levels. We still have 40 major bus routes that have been cut by up to 50%. You can make changes to your 2024 budget. Continuing the present status quo is not acceptable when we are discouraging many choice riders from taking transit as they see many buses passing by with the sign, "Sorry, bus full." Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Nathan, and I appreciate you coming and taking the time to talk to us about a few issues that are so important to you. So that's the end of our public delegations. So we'll move on to item number 3 on our
So
agenda.
you heard me?
Yes, we can hear you.
On the phone?
We went and we shouldn't call on them.
Oh, she said, oh, you didn't hear me? I just talked.
We didn't know.
Okay, is there a way that we can mute that number? Thank you. Thank you. All right, so we're going to move on to item number 3 on our agenda, which is our CEO report. And Kevin, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Chair Cunningham, and good morning, board. Thank you so much for having me here today. In my management report, I'll be providing updates on our community outreach activities this summer, the return of Tap to Win sweepstakes, free public Wi-Fi on the transit system, and the expansion of the SkyTrain network. I'll also share some of the ways we're increasing bus service this fall and what we're doing to improve accessibility on the system. Next slide, please. I just want to start off by, as Chair Cunningham noted earlier, this Saturday, September 30th, is National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. And learning about the painful truths of residential schools is a very important aspect of reconciliation with Indigenous peoples and future generations. And I would like to honor Indigenous peoples and communities impacted by residential school systems, including survivors, for being brave enough to share their stories, those who never returned home and couldn't tell theirs, and their families who live with the immense pain and the trauma of these truths. To move reconciliation forward meaningfully, TransLink is committed to continually building an inclusive and equitable transportation system that supports Indigenous peoples, cultures, and their perspectives. Next slide, please. As part of our commitment to celebrating Indigenous artistry on the transit network, I'm pleased to share that we've just added a new series of murals by Indigenous artists at King George SkyTrain station. And we've partnered with artists from Katzie, Kwantlen, and Semiahmoo First Nations to add these cultural recognition pieces to the transit network. And these murals celebrate the rich culture and history of the Indigenous nations while encouraging passersby to reflect on the meaning of the land we travel on today. We recognize that TransLink needs to play an active role to work effectively in the pursuit of thriving and sustainable Indigenous communities, and we're committed to seeing these promises through. Next slide, please. This summer, as part of our Ride and Shine campaign, we were proud to present 7 car-free day festivals in Surrey, New Westminster, Vancouver, Port Coquitlam, and North Vancouver. And I had the pleasure of attending a number of these festivals, which are a great opportunity for us to encourage Metro Vancouverites to get out of their cars and experience all the region has to offer by walking, cycling, and using transit. We partnered with the PNE to offer 2-for-1 fare Fridays, giving transit customers the chance to check out the 3 TransLink exhibits and enjoy all that the PNE has to offer at a reduced rate. We also made it easier for customers to take transit to and from the PNE by adding an express bus in addition to regular bus service. September 4th also marked the last day of summer service on the 900 bike bus, which provided extra capacity for bicycles between the Tsawwassen Ferry Terminal and Bridgeport Station, one of the most popular routes for our cycling customers. The bike bus is really just such a perfect example of how integrating transit with another form of sustainable transportation can really meet the needs of our customers. Next slide, please. I'm also excited to share that our Tap In to Win sweepstakes contest is back and running until October 31st. This campaign incentivizes customers to choose transit, offering them a chance to win weekly prizes, including the grand prize of 5 years of free transit. Customers can enter the contest by registering their Compass card online and then simply tapping their Compass card as usual during each transit trip, up to a limit of 2 entries per day. This is really our way of demonstrating that we appreciate our customers while promoting transit as a safe, efficient, and climate-friendly mode of transportation for Metro Vancouver. Next slide, please. I'm also pleased to share that customers riding any of our 5 rapid bus routes now have access to free public Wi-Fi. Through our Customer Experience Action Plan, we're continuing to work with Rogers Communications to install free public Wi-Fi system-wide. In addition to our rapid buses, customers can access free Wi-Fi on some of our other articulated buses, onboard most C-bus vessels, on some SkyTrain cars, and at several transit hubs around the region. These upgrades are yet another way we're elevating the customer experience by making it easier for customers to use their transit time for leisure, work, or to connect with family and friends. Next slide, please. Our SkyTrain expansion program, now referred to as Sept, is a $3 billion investment that will prepare our SkyTrain network for a significant expansion over the next several years, including the Broadway subway and Surrey-Langley SkyTrain extensions. To support this, we're adding 205 new Mark V trains to the SkyTrain fleet on the Expo and Millennium lines that will carry up to 25% more passengers than current trains. I'm so happy to share that the first of the new 5-car trains is currently undergoing testing at a facility in Kingston, Ontario. We anticipate the first Mark V train to arrive in Vancouver by early 2024 for further commissioning and testing before entering service by the end of 2024. And then the rest of the fleet will be gradually added throughout and by the end of 2028. I'm also excited to see progress being made on the Broadway subway project, which reached a new milestone in August. Excavation work under Cambie Street has now been completed for the future connection between the Canada Line southbound platform and the East-West Millennium Line platform. Once complete, this will be the deepest station along the Broadway corridor to ensure the Canada Line can continue to operate safely through construction. And when it opens in 2026, the Millennium Line extension along Broadway will significantly reduce customer travel time, saving the average customer almost 30 minutes a day and relieving congestion along Broadway. Our SkyTrain system is currently the 4th busiest rapid transit system across Canada and the US, only trailing behind New York, Toronto, and Montreal. And it's remarkable to me that our system is now busier than Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Boston. And as our region continues to grow, it's important that we take these steps now to ensure our SkyTrain offers a modern, safe, and reliable transit experience in the future. Next slide, please. At the start of the month, our fall service changes came into effect, increasing bus service on 22 routes, including several routes that serve post-secondary institutions. And following feedback from the City of Surrey and local businesses, we also redirected Route 531 to better serve the Campbell Heights industrial area, a key manufacturing hub in our region. And as our region continues to experience rapid population growth, these service changes help ensure accessible and efficient public transit in our communities. Next slide, please. Last week, I joined the Mayor's Council at a news conference warning really that time is running out for provincial and federal governments to commit new funding for public transit expansion amid really surging ridership in the Metro Vancouver region. And this comes at a critical time as we're also facing a very significant housing crisis. We know that people choose to live where there is accessible transit to get them to work, especially those who rent and those on lower incomes, who often work long distances from where they can afford to reside. And now more than ever, it's clear that in order to serve our region's, solve our region's housing crisis, we must acknowledge that interconnection with transit infrastructure and its ability to open the door to affordable housing. Compared to 2019, our ridership recovery has surpassed all other major transit systems in Canada and the United States. And just last week, we reached 90% recovery, another post-pandemic ridership high. 400,000 unique customers are using the system every day, and that's the same number as 2019. 1/3 of the population in this region relies on transit every week. While other agencies in North America are struggling to recover their ridership, there are areas in Metro Vancouver that have now surpassed pre-pandemic volumes. Bus ridership in Surrey, for example, has not only returned to former volumes, it's actually grown 20% over 2019 levels. And during the afternoon rush hour, we're seeing 1/3 of bus trips in Vancouver and 1/4 of the bus trips in Surrey are overcrowded in the busiest direction. And of course, we know that this is going to get worse as our population grows because we are growing fast. Metro Vancouver sees 50,000 people move here each year, and these people need a way to conveniently get around the region. The Access for Everyone plan will really reduce barriers to new affordable housing developments throughout the region and better serve existing communities where transit ridership is already overcrowded. And that plan entails some really big things like doubling bus service over the next decade, building 9 new bus rapid transit lines, and increasing funding for active transportation infrastructure by a factor of 10. So, now is not the time to pump the brakes on transit expansion. Just as we invest in hospitals and schools, we must ensure that our transit infrastructure meets our region's needs now and into the future. There's just no other way to create and sustain healthy, connected, and livable communities. Next slide, please. As part of our ensuring that our system really does have access for everyone, we know that TransLink plays a crucial role in making it easier for people of all abilities to move throughout the region. And that's why I'm proud to share TransLink's 2023 accessibility plan, a roadmap that really embodies our dedication to inclusivity and removing barriers for all. This plan outlines 32 specific actions aimed to address the diverse needs of customers and employees by focusing on 4 critical areas: service design and delivery, the built environment, information and communications, and transportation. This plan is really just one step, though, on our ongoing journey towards inclusivity. We value feedback from our advisory committees, our customers, our employees, and our stakeholders as it guides us in effectively enhancing accessibility. And I had the great opportunity to join Chair Cunningham, Directors Andrea Reimer and Alan Seckel, Electoral Area A Director Jen McCutcheon, and Coquitlam Councillor Brent Asmundson to travel through the transit system with 2 members of our Access Transit Users Advisory Committee. We covered a lot of topics across different modes. It was I think insightful for us all to learn firsthand about the experiences of being a power wheelchair user and someone living with sight loss navigating our system. And by working together, by learning from each other, we can unlock a more inclusive, more empowered, and more connected region that reflects the diversity of our people and the communities that we serve. Next slide, please. I want to echo some of the comments that Chair Cunningham made, that after 4 years as Chief Officer at Metro Vancouver Transit Police and 37 years of policing, Chief Dave Jones is retiring. And I do want to take this opportunity to personally thank the Chief for his great leadership and dedicated service to the enterprise and to the region. During his tenure, the Chief made really important strides in advancing public safety and really set transit police up for success as we expand the transit system over the next decade. With this news, effective October 1, Deputy Chief Officer Suzanne Muir will officially step into the role of Transit Police Chief Officer. And Chief Muir brings a wealth of policing knowledge and leadership from time spent at both VPD and Transit Police, and I look forward to seeing what we will accomplish together. Deputy Chief Officer Muir will also be the first woman Chief Officer of Transit Police, and so it's a pleasure to both acknowledge and celebrate the historic nature of this announcement. I'm confident Deputy Chief Officer Muir will continue to advance the safety and security of the system for both our customers and our employees. Next slide, please. With that, I want to thank you so much for your time today. A lot of updates and announcements in there. Happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Great, Kevin. Thank you very much. And I just want to echo how pleased I am that incoming Chief Muir will be our first female chief. So that's very exciting for us. So board members, any questions for Kevin on his report? He covered a lot of ground and lots of information. Some of the items are going to come forward in our agenda. Just wondering if anybody has any questions for Kevin in the meantime. All right, well, seeing none then, I'm going to thank you, Kevin, very much for that report. I'm going to welcome Sani Zain, who is the President and General Manager of the BC Rapid Transit Company. And Sani, the floor is yours, and we look forward to your report.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members of the board. I'm happy to provide you with updates and highlights from the summer and the last quarter from what's been going on at the BCRTC. Next slide, please. We are focused at all times on our 3 core objectives. That's delivering excellent service to our customers, being ready for the exciting future of SkyTrain expansion, and always looking after our people and making sure we have a healthy, motivated, and fulfilled team. We will not achieve our other 2 objectives without a team that is achieving that real enthusiasm for what we're doing here. Next slide, please. I'm not sure where time has flown, but here we are. I'm 1 year into this job and absolutely loving every minute of it. It's been a year of listening, learning, and leading. I knew coming in, SkyTrain was filled with passionate people, and I've gotten to know and meet many of them and continue to do so. Phenomenal knowledge base, folks who've been on the team for 20, 25, sometimes 35 years. An absolutely fantastic place where people are passionate about SkyTrain and West Coast Express, really focused on delivering that excellent customer service, and very excited about our incoming future. We're united in our common goals, a lot of work to do. Everyone here has their sleeves rolled up and embracing that future. We're doing it with tremendous support from TransLink at all levels, and that's been very heartwarming to see the strong bond between BCRTC and TransLink in achieving the future we're all aspiring to. Next slide, please. We know that we have a product that is in very high demand. Our ridership, as Kevin mentioned, is rebounding faster than any other metro area in the US and Canada. We continue to set record riderships post-COVID every quarter. As Kevin mentioned, we are 4th busiest rail transit system in Canada and the US. We see that as definitely validation of what we're doing, but also a tremendous challenge, keeping up our standards, staying on top of our service offerings, making sure we deliver that excellent, safe, and reliable service every single day. that is our challenge, and we're up to it. The team is mobilized to keep us going in this direction. We very much see how the region is embracing what we have to offer and growing around our transit hubs. Next slide, please. We're welcoming these riders by maintaining a very high level of standard for our service delivery, our on-time performance, our customer experience ratings are all maintaining high ratings. We're very pleased to see that. We do not take that for granted. We know that every day we need to earn our customers' appreciation, and that's what we're out there doing. Next slide, please. On the more technical side, keeping our assets in a state of good repair is an ongoing challenge, with our system now entering around 40 years old plus. It's one of the examples that we pulled off this summer was a very complex replacement of a switch and a turnout near Gateway Station. This required a complicated single tracking and alternative service pattern, which was the most complicated we've ever put in place. We did our utmost to minimize impacts to our customers with significant communication presence on the ground to help our customers through this period. We completed the work safely and 8 days ahead of schedule. So really pleased about that initiative, which took place through the June-July period this summer. Next slide, please. And sometimes delivering excellent service is about engagement in the community. We have a passionate group at SkyTrain. They want to be involved in their community. They interact with their customers every day. So through the summer, we enhanced our work with Success Burnaby's newcomer program, focusing on education, communication around topics like safety, fares, wayfinding, things which long-term residents may take for granted, but newcomers to the region may need some help with. We were out there doing our best to help newcomers feel more welcome in our region. Next slide, please. And sometimes it's very small things which contribute to excellent service. During the summer, we refreshed some lane markings or wayfinding markings at commercial Broadway stations, and we installed what you see here as a Pride guidance marking to help customers navigate the station. This is one of the very simple tools that our frontline workers, they advise customers follow the line, and we made sure that the line is celebrating diversity in the region and our own diversity and our welcoming culture. Next slide, please. Moving on to achieving future readiness, I'll build on what Kevin mentioned. We're very excited to see the very first Mark V train now on the tracks at Kingston undergoing testing. We had a team of BCRTC team members at the facility working with Alstom, doing quality checks and checking on the progress of the trains. This will be a significant change for us. This is a brand new design, obviously longer. Latest technology, latest customer amenities. For us, it means readiness for testing and commissioning, and also things behind the scenes like spare parts and inventory, and where do we get the supplies for the care and feeding of this new train mark. So all that work is going on in the background, and really looking forward to the arrival of the first train and us starting the significant work of testing and commissioning the train on our system. Next slide, please. Closer to home, almost outside my window. We are also very excited to see the new operations control center taking shape. This will be our new home for all control operations. This is the team that runs SkyTrain behind the scenes. We've been operating out of a 1985 control room all these years, very cramped, very overcrowded, not fit for purpose. So we're building this new facility, and it should be ready in time for Broadway subway project opening. We have now started conducting tours of the new building for our control operators, so they begin to see what their new home would look like as it takes shape. And that will include some virtual reality imaging for the control operators to begin to get a sense of how that room will look and how the actual controls will be available to them to modernize how we operate SkyTrain. So this will be a really key part of our future, and looking forward to completion in about 18 months' time. Next slide, please. Also work going on where I am now at the Operations and Maintenance Center, some significant upgrades to allow us to welcome our future. The team that looks after our guideway maintenance is getting a new guideway shop being built right here, and the move-in date is in December. We are also in the process of building a new vehicle maintenance shop to expand our maintenance capacity, and that's also happening here. We're also expanding our cleaning lanes to accommodate the new longer Mark V trains. So that work is ongoing. So we have a hub of activity going on at the OMC, all to achieve our future readiness for SkyTrain expansion. Next slide, please. On our people and team side, very happy to report that our lost time injury stats are showing continued improvements. We now have multiple teams who have recorded a year or more, in some cases 2 years or more, without any lost time injuries. Long may that continue. We remain diligent in focusing on safety, and our safety team is prioritizing high critical events and activities to be present on site to make sure our crews remain safe and provide that extra diligence on safety. So this is an ongoing management issue to make sure we achieve low numbers, the lowest possible numbers in safety, and the trends are looking good through the summer. Next slide, please. We very happy to report that through the summer, we concluded bargaining with QP 7000, and they represent about 80% of our staff. We achieved a 5-year agreement with the union, which sees us achieving labor stability as we work through all the significant milestones that are coming our way. Very happy that this was concluded with a good set of negotiations, and we have now entered that era of the new agreement as of September 1st, and looking forward to continued excellent relationships between us and the union. Next slide, please. We are very heartened to always see very strong demand for employment opportunities at BCRTC. We are growing with all this expansion that's coming our way. And whenever we are fielding job fairs, we are getting an excellent amount of interest and a very strong set of candidates show up every time we're out in the community advertising that we're growing and we're looking for more help. Most recently, we held a session in partnership with TransLink to focus on field staff, and we had more than 400 candidates show up for the first set of interviews. This allows us to have a bank of labor that we can draw on as we grow. We did a similar exercise last year with maintenance, and we'll continue to do those events to highlight that we are looking for help, and we're a growing company, and really great to see the response that we're getting to these events. Next slide, please. And most importantly is to celebrate and recognize the efforts of our existing employees. The summer is a great time to do this. We held a series of staff appreciation barbecues and a family day through the summer. We went where our teams are, in many cases into the field, and we did events like barbecues, celebrating the frontline staff and all that they do to achieve the success that we have with our customers and our high ratings. So more to come on that as we move into the winter holiday season. Next slide, please. Thank you very much, Chair and board members. Happy to take any questions that you may have.
Sani, thank you very much, and congratulations on your 1-year time frame. It is amazing how fast it's gone by. So I agree with you. I spent some time with you about a week ago, and I was struck by how much you have going on at BCRTC behind the scenes to keep, it's one thing for the train to be out in the track, but it's all the other pieces that are going to make all that come together. So I really just want to acknowledge the number of things that you're trying to juggle to bring it all together and make it all function. So
thank you.
So any questions for Sani on his report? It was a fulsome report, and if there's any specific questions. All right, well, seeing none, then we'll thank you very much, Sani, for that. We're going to ask Mike McDaniel to bring forward his presentation on the Coast Mountain Bus Company. So welcome, Mike.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Chair Cunningham. Welcome to the rest of the board and members of the public watching today. I'm happy to provide the President's report here for Coast Mountain Bus Company. So we'll get started. Next slide, please. So you see a couple things on the agenda here, a usual bus and handy dart service update, a neat story around a resource guide for women identifying operators, a recruitment campaign, lots of stuff about recruitment today at BCRTC and at CNBC, at the 75th anniversary trolley anniversary that we did just this last August, closing out the Copper in Transit study and some interesting news there. And then just ending with, given the aspects of this last summer, some wildfire smoke response plan updates. So I'll get into it. Next slide, please. So first, for bus, both conventional and community shuttle, year to date, we're operating 99% of scheduled service. Kevin mentioned this before with the school sessions back this month. Delivering fall service changes have helped keep up with the strong ridership demand. And of course, that demand has predominantly been south of the Fraser and in the Maple Ridge area. This is a trend that's continued, but as you've heard about ridership demand, it is trending up and it is busy out in the system. For Handy Dart, we're also seeing ridership growth there. We're always prioritizing getting customers, of course, where they need to go, where they need to go to their appointments. And we do that either through Handy Dart or through taxi service. We delivered 98% of the requested trips, and on-time performance for August was 91%, a slight dip from June of 2023, where it was at 92%, but still very strong. Next slide, please. So moving to just talk a little bit about our transit operators at CNBC, specifically those who are women identifying. And as you know, we focus on hiring more women identifying operators, but also supporting those that currently work for us and recognizing their unique challenges in the transit industry. And historically and today, they've been underrepresented in numbers. So we took to some focus groups, and in 2021 to 2022, we conducted some focus groups with some women identifying operators. We wanted to better understand their experience on the job, as well as get their recommendations on how we can make our workplace more inclusive. One of the outcomes of those focus groups was a new resource guide, specifically designed for them with their input. The guide provides information about how to succeed in their role and improve their experience on the job. And just a couple of months ago, July 11th, we launched that guide officially. So far, it's been very well received, and the plan is to keep that updated annually, to keep it updated and fresh, and we will do exactly that. But it's a great success, and kudos to the team that led those. It's a great success for all of our EDI programs. Next slide, please. So from operations to maintenance, next week you'll see a recruiting campaign focusing on attracting qualified commercial transport mechanics. These are our CT mechanics that we've referred to a number of times. Our teams are planning for vacancies through things like either attrition, turnover, and of course, service expansion in future years. In fact, between 2023 and 2026, we're targeting to hire about 175 CT mechanics. The campaign I mentioned will run for about a month, and ads will be in a variety of areas, websites, trade websites, social media, and of course on bus backs, bus wraps, SkyTrain platforms. Following that, the campaign will end with a hiring event in November. And if technology works here in a minute, you will all see for the first time the 15-second video that we've done up. So I will cue that by saying next slide, and we'll see if technology works. So next slide. So a very snappy video, as you can see there, and kudos to the team that worked on that through CNBC and TransLink. It's sure to help us attract some great staff here now and into the future. Next slide, please. One slide before, I think. Go back one slide. Nope. No, we're looking for the 75th anniversary trolley bus slide. And if not, I will improvise. There we go. There it is. All right. So not often do you get to celebrate a 75th anniversary party, but we did. We all did, and our trolley buses turned 75. At Vancouver Transit Center, we celebrated this milestone first on August 15th with a few announcements and kudos. And on the anniversary day, August 16th, we celebrated with our staff throughout our organization. In addition, TransLink unveiled a commemorative, very popular Compass Mini that was in the shape of a trolley bus. And the Transit Museum Society trams offered free rides to the public on a restored Brill trolley bus in downtown Vancouver. And looking towards the future, we heard one of our speakers today talking about his love for the trolleys as well, and we are planning for the new version of the trolleys over the next few years. And I can assure the board that we CMBC and TransLink are working on the exact right mix of 60-foot articulated buses and 40-foot buses to better serve the future of our trolley riding public. And so that is going on as we speak, and we will see new trolley buses coming into Vancouver in 2028 and 2029. We're very excited about that. Next slide, please. And we'll skip over that slide and go to the copper in transit slide. All right, I knew this was going to be a challenging technology, but that's fine. So we are celebrating this as well for our closing out of our copper in transit study. As you may recall, the copper in transit study was funded through Tech Resources, was a collaboration between CMBC, TransLink, TTC in Toronto, Vancouver Coastal Health, UBC, and Mount Sinai Hospital. In the study, copper products were installed in a few CMBC buses, SkyTrain cars, as well as ones out in Toronto as well. The results were published in May and showing that copper products can eliminate 99.9% of bacteria in public transit, as well as viruses in a laboratory setting within 2 hours of contact. So due to these positive findings going forward, CMBC will put in our bus specifications an option for installing antimicrobial surfaces on bus stanchions, and we'll see how those requests go for new bus orders. CMBC is also sharing this knowledge with the Canadian Urban Transit Association. This is CUTA, the Canadian National Association out of Ottawa, with a white paper. We're also presenting our Director of Safety, Environment and Emergency Management, Derek Stewart, is presenting at the CUTA Fall Conference in Edmonton in November. And fingers crossed, we are also, we have an application in for an APTA Innovation Award for this in 2 weeks. APTA is the North American version of CUTA. So stay tuned for that. We're keeping our fingers crossed. And next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, over the summer, CMBC updated our wildfire smoke response plan. Obviously, with the occurrences of wildfires throughout the province, we needed to do this. And the plan includes defining triggers and responses at each level. Most recent update included the addition of non-medical masks, as they provide some protection against wildfire smoke. When Metro Vancouver reaches an air quality index of 8+ or high risk, masks will be made available to employees that are working outside for long periods of time. And of course, with the occurrence of COVID-19 over the last number of years, we do have a myriad of CMBC branded non-medical masks available, and they're available in all locations if we need to distribute those to staff. Next slide, please. So just to conclude my report, members of the board, we're seeing obviously a change, seasonal change. The leaves are turning color, and as mentioned earlier, fall service changes went into effect earlier this month. Students are returning to school in the region, along with other customers relying on the bus system to get them to school, work appointments, and everywhere in between. As you know, 2/3 of all transit trips in the region are delivered by bus and CBus, and I want to thank each and every one of our 6,000 staff here at CMBC. Everyone does their part every single day and every single night to make that possible. And so kudos to the CMBC team for doing that. And that concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Mike, thank you very much for your report. When you came on with the first slide of the original bus from 75 years ago, it just made me smile. And I think you probably are going to get some applications based on that video, because it was a great video, very snappy, and all the important information there. So well done. I will be interested to hear about the cost of copper, that it had the implications that it would have on the price of the bus, because I know how expensive metals are. But I see we have a few questions here, so you've obviously brought forward some information. Mayor Hurley.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Michael, for the report. Just around staffing and around our trades. My question is what are we doing on apprenticeships? Are we working hard to have apprenticeships within our systems so that we are futurizing our system? So, and also building opportunities for youth in our province here and in the Lower Mainland. So that's my question.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Hurley. Really good question. Yeah, CNBC has a long history of apprentice programs. We have an apprentice program for our CT mechanics today. It's been going for a number of years, very successful. We've actually just started an apprentice program for our parts department. That is very new this year that we're in. And we are also working on, along with other parts of the enterprise, some work on really getting to people earlier in the secondary school system to really get them interested in trades and really informed about trades and what that does mean and how they can make a career out of that. So there's a lot of work going on in the background, and in the coming months we'll be prepared to kind of bring that forward, let the board know exactly what we've been doing around that. But yeah, there's a lot of energy that goes into kind of growing people from within and looking to industry to help that early on. So great question. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Hurley. Director Ross.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Mike. I've got two comments. I got to start with the trolleys. I wasn't going to, but as we separate 75 years and I see trolley bus 2416, I feel really old as I drove that back in the early 80s, and I feel my knees creaking. But one of the things, and I've said this before in some of our other meetings, is to quote Joni Mitchell, we don't always know what we got till it's gone. Having the old trolley buses were a huge success. And when I think of places like San Francisco with the cable cars or Melbourne with their old streetcars, they become an attraction themselves. And while I realize there's some inherent costs and other issues around these old vehicles, I'm just wondering if, looking forward, we can not only preserve those we have, but maybe look at using those as a legacy. And there may even be business opportunities as a tourist attraction and obviously beloved by residents of the city and the region, that there may be a way to incorporate that into a operational function of TransLink sometimes. So just looking at the lineups, I was fortunate to be at both events. So the lineups down outside Waterfront Station with people just so eager to get on and experience that piece of the past. I think it's an opportunity we shouldn't just slip through our fingers. So that was just one comment. The next item is regarding both your resource guide for women and people identifying as women, and also tie that into the video we just saw for the mechanics. And during my human resource and governance report, I will be touching a little bit on some of those issues, but I'm glad to see some movement. I've been very critical of our low gender numbers in sort of non-traditional roles, so I'm glad to see this a step. I'm hoping that the guide can be also used in a positive way for attracting women and other EDI seeking peoples into both the transit operators. And while I like the video of the mechanics, I still think there's a great opportunity there as well, as we see an evolving workplace for non-typical, whether it's gender or otherwise, to get into what is going to be a really great future career in mechanics as we move, especially into the electrical field, and we'll see a move away from sort of the traditional heavy duty to a different type of requirement for our fleet going forward. So I understand that we have 175 places looking for in a very competitive market. But as I said in my report, we will be talking a little bit more about how we may look into some of those other areas. So hopefully we can build that into part of the program as you roll it out and we start looking for more and more people to fill those vital roles going forward. But thank you, and hopefully in the near future we will see the needle move on some of that disproportionate gender balance without the operation. But thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Andy. I'll take both of those comments back. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So now to Director Dhaliwal.
Thank you, Lorraine. Mike, thank you for the report. Your last slide in your PowerPoint talked about the changing weather. I'm just wondering if you can just provide an update about inclemental weather and winter readiness and the preparations that are being made right now in anticipation of those, so that people can feel confident that the services are going to keep running.
Yeah, thanks, Harj. Lots of preparation. I mean, weirdly enough, we're putting the summer stuff to bed, and we're putting the winter stuff out right away. And so everything from changing our tires to up tread them for the fall has already started. It started actually in August. So we'll take our kind of summer treads and which are a little bit lower, and we'll put all the tread, the bigger treads up. Obviously, it takes a while to do that through a fleet of 1,800 buses, but that's why we have to start so soon. We're also working with municipalities on snow clearing plans. Obviously, we're really our service is only as good as the roads that we can drive on, and so there's a lot of preparation for that, key snow routes, etc. We're also working with our contractors for snow clearing around our bus loops and exchanges. That's gone really well over the last couple of years, but there's always room for some improvement. As mentioned in the past, we've always looked at new technology around bus tires. We're still looking at that right now and putting the finishing touches. More information will come out in the coming month around that and the technical specs on that. So lots of work is being done, and as you said, instill in confidence in the public that we are preparing. We absolutely are, and we'll work with the cities that we operate in for that preparation. So thank you for the question.
Thanks, Mike. So I don't see any further questions, so I think that should be it for now. And we'll look forward to hearing more in your next report about some of those little teasers that you just put out now.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mike. All right, so we're going to ask Deputy Chief Muir to provide her report. Her first report as a deputy, and soon to be her new report as the chief. So Suzanne.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members of the board. And I really appreciate the thoughtful, welcoming remarks. And I'm pleased to provide you and members of the public with the update for Transit Police. Next slide, please. Excited to provide an update on our Community Safety Officer program. During Q1 and Q2 2023, we focused on the recruitment and selection of qualified CSO candidates. Our first class of 10 CSOs commenced their 19-week training program on June 26th. The training is divided into 2 blocks, and our CSOs have completed their block 1, which is their 11-week foundational training, and are currently engaged in their block 2 field training that started on September 11th, which will be 8 weeks in duration. A graduation ceremony is being planned for November 2nd, and we're currently in the process of hiring another 14 CSOs for our second class scheduled in November. Next slide, please. The 19-week program includes a variety of classroom, online, and field training experiences. Examples of course materials have included BC fair and impartial policing, cultural awareness and humility, Indigenous and truth and reconciliation awareness, trauma-informed practice, along with specialized training dealing with diverse customers on the transit system. Guest speakers have also thoughtfully shared their lived experiences, bringing invaluable meaning and insights into the program. Next slide. With SMS messaging, and I noted that there was an inquiry made at the last meeting of the origin of the number, I'd like to report back on a little bit of a history on the 87777 number. And it was selected in 2013, and each number actually correlates to the first letter of transit police, see something, say something. Our text number continues to be promoted as a manner for transit riders to discreetly contact transit police when issues of concern arise on transit. When looking at the data in the Q1, Q2 2023 reporting period, there was a 26% increase in unique SMS text conversations when compared to the same period in 2022. And the number of police files generated from text messages increased by 1%. We're really encouraged to see these increases, and it coincides very closely with a recent and significant safety campaign, which saw the unique SMS numbers being promoted on over 5,000 bus interior cards, 200 SkyTrain interior cards, 185 station screens, 40 station advertising spaces. And really amazing to see as well that the website has seen over 100,000 visits, and the QR codes that have been placed have been scanned more than 60,000 times. In the coming months, decals will also be placed on buses and SkyTrain windows. And from Transit Police, we just really appreciate the opportunity and significant support in working with TransLink team on this important initiative. Next slide, please. With special events, with the return to events post-COVID, there's more and more persons and attending an event schedule throughout Metro Vancouver. In terms of Transit Police, we want to ensure we have officers deployed in high visibility uniforms to assist for calls for service and crowd control. If you compare Q1, Q2 2022 to this same period in 2023, our number of operational plans for concerts, sporting events, and festivals was up 77% year to date. We continue to ensure we plan and allocate appropriate resources to ensure the safety of the traveling public. Next slide, please. Our explosive detection dog team. So Transit Police is the only police agency in Canada with a dedicated explosive dog detection team. We work closely with other agencies in the United States and in Canada to ensure a high level of certification. I'd also like to highlight the recent success of our canine teams with a 2nd and 4th place finishes at the Canadian National Police Dog Championships this year in Ontario. Next slide, please. The opioid crisis continues to have a significant impact. This is the 4th consecutive year we've seen an increase in the number of naloxone deployments. Transit Police has responded to more individuals in distress by August 2023 with 62 instances than in all of 2022. And since 2020, we've seen an ongoing year-over-year increase in the use of naloxone kits, and sadly, 2023 continues that trend. Next slide, please. Proud to share with you an advancement on communication center recruitment. Due to increased competition for communication operators in the region, we've taken the position and developed an innovative in-house internal training program to develop those with little or no experience in police call taking. We've currently identified 5 operators, and they will go through a 5-month, 4-stage skill development process that will include mentoring and technical assessment as they move from call takers through to full dispatchers. That training consists of standardized training, testing, and that documentation. And I'd just like to, really recognize there was significant work in the development of that program and our team who did so. Next slide, please. And number of recognitions for Chief Dones. And just on a personal note, I just really like to thank and recognize him for his significant contributions to law enforcement. He's been the longest serving chief of Transit Police, and just such significant contributions to public safety as well as our organization and people. And with that, thank you, Chair and board members, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Chief. I see that Jen has a question. Jen.
Just a comment. Thank you, Deputy Chief Muir. I wanted to be sure to commend the compassion that was demonstrated in one of the examples provided to us in the written materials regarding the person that came to the attention of transit police for having caused a disturbance on the SkyTrain system, and who, after conversation with the transit police officer, it was learned that that person hadn't slept for a while and hadn't eaten for a while. And so transit police was able to provide the person with a hot drink, with food, and was able to get to the place where their behavior was no longer disturbing others. So I really wanted to please ask if you could convey our appreciation to the transit police officer for demonstrating that compassion and for considering the safety and well-being of everyone on the system, including the person who was causing the disturbance. And I know that that is not out of the ordinary at all for transit police or for others throughout the transit system, but certainly it's appreciated, and wanted to flag that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, and I will ensure those comments are shared.
Thanks, Jen. Andrea.
Thank you, Chairperson, and hello, Deputy Chief, soon to be Chief Muir. I had one comment and then a question related to each other. So ridership is way up, but crime is down, and then per rider is way down compared to pre-pandemic levels. Mental health apprehensions are way down. So I just wanted to say that's amazing, and it would indicate that the CSO program and other interventions are working. But I did want to note that sexual assaults are up substantially. I appreciate in the report that it says that they're back to pre-pandemic levels, but when you compare those to other kinds of crimes, I would like some commentary from you, if you got it, on what's going on and what kind of interventions we need to make to get those down as well.
Yeah, thank you for those comments as well as the question posed. Definitely, those numbers are concerning for us as well. And in fact, we have our analysts really doing a detailed look into whether there's any file linkages, trends, or factors that are linked to those increases. So that analysis is in progress. To date, we have not yet identified any, but certainly it is an area of focus and definitely concern for us as well. And we will be prioritizing.
Thank you.
Sorry, I lost my mouse for a minute and couldn't come off mute. Thank you. Thank you, Director Reimer, for that. So Suzanne, I don't see any other questions. I just want to comment about the CSO program. I know it's been something that we've been working on for a very long time. I'm very happy to see the recruits and them in action. As our system expands, there's going to be so many more demands on the service and the public feeling safe in regards to being on the system as it grows. So I can't underestimate I can appreciate the demands and underestimate how important the work is that you're doing. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you for those comments.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so that concludes the reports from our different operating companies. Now I'm going to move to the committee reports. And the first committee report is going to be presented by Karen Hortscher. And the chair for this committee is off on a short leave. And so Karen's going to take the floor for the Finance and Audit Committee report. So thank you, Karen, for doing this.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll present a brief update from the Audit and Finance Committee. We met last week as part of our quarterly meeting cycle, and we received reports on both safety and emergency management. We received and discussed a number of updates on capital projects, including both the rail expansion program and the Broadway subway project. We also reviewed a number of contracts and policies, including service contracts and company policies. We received and discussed a real estate update. We received an update on the Enterprise Resource Planning Program that is currently underway. And as a reminder, that's the ERP program in financial and supply chain. As part of our regular review of financial areas, we also reviewed our financing, liquidity, and borrowing programs. We met with the annual auditors in preparation for our year-end audit. That's an annual meeting that we hold in preparation for that audit. And as is our practice, we held an in-camera. We also met with the internal auditors to receive and discuss a number of updates in internal audit projects. And we also held an in-camera as part of our usual process. And finally, Chair, we received and reviewed a number of documents that are part of the statutory requirements of the Finance and Audit Committee, as is our regular practice. Chair, that's my brief update. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Karen. Many of you were there at the committee meeting, but some of you weren't. So if there's any questions or clarifications that you'd like from Karen, she's asked specifically not for any hard questions, but any questions for Karen? Okay, so seeing none, then we'll move on to the Planning, Communities, and Communication report. And this is being presented by Director Reimer. So thank you, Andrea.
Thank you, Chairperson. So we had quite a number of reports, most of, in fact, all of which were received for information. The first one was Government Relations and Public Affairs third quarter update. You heard most of the activities that we heard in the reports from the CEO and various the folks you've already heard from in the meeting. The one piece I did want to point to was the report back on the tour program that has been re-established post-pandemic in the waning days of the pandemic. I think all those folks with COVID from UBCM and other places would tell you there's still a pandemic happening, but the tour program for elected officials in the region is back on. And to note that we had 14 tours conducted by staff that included 30% of all local government officials in the region. So a very successful tour program. As well as many of the directors. We had the Indigenous Relations Q3 update where we heard about a few things, including that our staff complement has increased, which is great because their workload has increased substantially over the last few years. And the other piece that we heard about was the OMC engagement that has been done with the Squamish, the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Musqueam in regards to the new Millennium Line extension. What else did we hear? We heard from staff on comments that they've submitted on 2 regional growth strategy amendments that have been requested from Metro Vancouver in relation to sites in the township of Langley and Surrey. We heard the Q3 customer experience report, which included some really positive information around customer feedback on service, as well as the safety campaign and how that's been going, and the number of transit-friendly employers. And lastly, we heard the communications and marketing Q3 update, where we heard about many things you've already heard about. The one that I would note, how great it was to see TransLink continue to participate in the Pride Parade, and specifically the partnership with Joe Average this year and the bus wrap was very cool to see. And that was it for my report, Chairperson.
Thank you, Director Reimer. Any questions for Andrea in regards to her report? I know, again, several of you were there, so we'll move on then to Director Ross, who's going to present the HR and Governance Committee report. So, Andy.
Thank you, Chair. Our committee met on September 19th and also had a number of reports. I'm going to highlight a few that some have been mentioned, but I still think they should be touched on. And the first is the Accessible British Columbia Act that Kevin referred to and is an item on our agenda further on. I'm pleased to announce that with the release of the accessibility plan, TransLink is fully compliant with the Act effective on the September 1st of this year. As I said, more will be said about this report later, but I would like to extend the committee's thanks and recognition for those responsible for informing and developing the plan. Our external resources are the Access Transit Users Advisory Committee and the HandyDart Users Advisory Committee. And internally, we have 6 employee resource groups. and of course our staff who brought it all together. I could say a lot more about this, but I'll leave that for Gigi and Sarah when they present later on the agenda. Another item that it's been alluded to in some of the reports already, but a major focus for our organization is equity, diversity, and inclusion, and it continues to be a priority throughout the enterprise, including the subsidiaries. Some of the initiatives you've already heard. The work does continue to address issues of gender, multiculturalism, anti-racism, multi-language access, and a host of other areas. The EDI team is currently updating our strategy using the global equity and inclusion benchmarks. And I'll note that TransLink is working along with BC Hydro to organize an EDI conference for Crown Corporations on October 27th, which is one of a series of workshops that are being hosted. And of course, I would be remiss under this section if I also didn't recognize our first incoming ever female chief of police, Suzanne Moore. I know we'll look forward to working with Suzanne as she goes forward. Chair Cunningham and myself had a chance to sit down and talk, and we're both excited about the perspective that she will bring. And also thanks to Chief Dave Jones as he moves on to whatever great retirement prospects he's looking at. Also, it alluded to in both of our subsidiary reports, recruitment and retention within the subsidiaries and within our organization is still a high-level concern. Like all organizations, TransLink is transitioning to a new working paradigm post-COVID. The attraction and retention of staff has required all employees to reevaluate the way HR department functions. TransLink is no different. HR, in addition to being incredibly busy, have also been working on ways to speed up the process from application to starting the job. This, quote, time to fill metrics have dramatically improved across all arenas of the enterprise. And to give some examples of the magnitude, to keep the wheels turning both figuratively and literally, here are some of the numbers. Our transit operators, there have been 4 job fairs with over 4,000 candidates applying. And between January and June, there's been 324 operators already hired this year. And let me just say, TransLink continues to buck the North American trend in being successful in operator recruitment. Many transit agencies across North America are struggling after laying off staff and trying to get back and fill the needs. We also heard in Sunny's report, over 400 candidates applying for positions at SkyTrain. And in addition to that, in non-service related, there has been 10 career fairs put on by our HR department and have filled 660 positions in that same January to June. And finally, touching on trades, which Mike McDaniel from Coast Mountain alluded to, the skilled trades positions remain a challenge industry-wide to both recruit and to fill. So in addition to developing a marketing campaign, this presents, as I mentioned in my comments, a unique opportunity to potentially present careers in the trades in a new and non-traditional way, to not only fill vitally needed skill positions, but looking through an EDI and reconciliation lens, there may be potential to attract segments of the population who have never considered this career path previously. To that end, we are in preliminary discussions with the province and Skilled Trades BC and schools both within the K-12 and post-secondary sectors regarding how transit could play a role in skilling the future. I'm hopeful that we'll have more to report on that in future reports as we see an ever-changing and demanding workforce requirement for skilled trades. That concludes my report, Chair.
Thank you very much, Andy. Any questions for Andy on his report? That was a good fulsome report, and several people were there, but lots of exciting things going on. So I'm going to just go back to Andrea for a moment because there was some important information that she forgot to share with us. So, so thank you, Andy, and back to Andrea.
I'm so sorry. I had a note to go to my notes on my agenda and completely skipped over it. So the item that I forgot to report on was the recommended new metrics for quarterly board updates in relation to ridership. So as you know, and as you heard from the CEO, the ridership has stabilized in 2023, and we've been using that during the pandemic as a metric to the 2019 levels, but really it's been TransLink's North Star for the last decade, the ridership metric. However, a trend around, I think I've heard it referred to as value over volume. I think the way we're thinking of it is value and volume at the same time. But the board has requested that management repurpose the ridership reporting into a more comprehensive account that will also include updates about the quality of service that TransLink provides, as well as the state of other transportation modes in the region. So we looked at a report from staff, excellent report that I think I'll preface just by saying that TransLink tracks a great number of metrics, as do BCRTC and Coast Mountain Bus Company and the transit fleets, as we saw in the reports that we've just seen. And these are really about taking information that we're either tracking already or information that's of particular interest to the board to do this high-level management to allow us to govern effectively. So we were brought 9 metrics that fall into 3 categories. The first is transit usage, so therefore ridership. So that's the first category, and it has 1 metric in it, the ridership metric. The second category was transit convenience, where staff proposed that we look at overcrowding, on-time performance, so the reliability of the transit service. The fourth one, or third in this category, travel time competitiveness. So really looking at the amount of time it takes to travel from point A to point B by transit versus private vehicles. The fifth one was transit user satisfaction, which, as you know, we track and comes through customer experience surveys. And then the sixth is a new one, which would be non-users' perceptions of the transit system. So an important one, and one that we speculate and talk about at the board sometimes and get information from some sources on, but to have a specific metric around that. So those are the 5 in transit convenience. And then the last 3 were related to other modes. So road usage, vehicle volumes, account locations, road reliability, so travel time variability between point A and point B, and then active modes usage, so the number of pedestrian and bicycles at count locations. The committee had an in-depth discussion on this. As you know, it's a topic we're all very interested in, and I came out of it endorsing, it wasn't asked for a formal vote, but generally endorsing the staff direction on it, understanding that it will evolve over time. Some of these metrics are very close to being available or already available, and some will be a work in progress that may evolve as they progress. Thank you, Chairperson, and I'm sorry about that.
No need for apology. It's just important to share that information because so much good work has gone into everything. So I think that's important. So any questions for Andrea on that specific topic? All right, so seeing none, we're going to go back to Karen now in her other capacity as the chair of the IT committee. So Karen.
Thank you, Chair. So the Information Technology Committee held its quarterly meeting last week, September 20th, and we received updates on a number of important projects and items occurring throughout TransLink. We received an update on the Enterprise Resource Planning, or ERP program, timelines and next steps. We received updates on a number of current IT projects, and as is our custom, we received more detailed reporting on sort of the top 10 projects underway. We received an update on IT security and resiliency projects, including capital program improvements and progress on various initiatives that are happening across TransLink. And then finally, we met with the internal auditor to receive reporting on a couple of IT directly or indirectly related projects and held an in-camera meeting with the internal auditor as part of that discussion. Chair, that's my relatively brief report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Karen, thank you very much. And although it was brief, and I know this is a newer committee, there's so many important pieces of work that are happening at this committee because, you know, technology is the foundation of everything that we do. So appreciate all the oversight that the committee has in regards to this area of our business. So any questions for Karen in regards to the work of the committee? All right, well, seeing none, thank you very much, all the committee chairs, for the work of the committees for this quarter. And we're going to move now to Jeffrey Busby. Jeff, you're here to give us a report on operations, maintenance, and rehab report on all of our bridges. So welcome.
Thank you, Chairperson. It's good to be with you this morning and happy to provide a brief update on activities underway to maintain the region's bridges. Next slide. TransLink is responsible for 5 bridges that connect 9 municipalities. And this has been a very busy summer for activities to keep the bridges in a state of good repair. And in some cases, make some rehabilitations that will extend the life of our bridge assets. I'll be giving updates this morning on the Westham Island Bridge, Knight Street, and Golden Ears bridges, which don't receive as much attention as some of our other bridges, but there's important work that's happening there. Next slide, please. The Westham Island Bridge is, I believe, TransLink's oldest operating asset. It's more than 113 years old. And it is the only access between Westham Island and the rest of the city of Delta on the mainland. In recent years, the reliability of the swing span on the bridge had declined, meaning that the swing would not open or close when required, impacting both marine and vehicle traffic. TransLink initiated a capital project with the objective of replacing deteriorated components in the span so that we could improve the reliability for this important connection. Next slide. So key elements of the project included installation of piles and other temporary works to allow the bridge to remain open during construction, recognizing that this is an important connection for the agricultural community. We worked with local law enforcement and our own transit police to enforce reduced load capacity on the bridge during this work. The work was performed mostly overnight to minimize public impacts. And we made provisions to ensure that there was emergency access to the island throughout the construction period. I'm pleased to report that the swing operation was restored as of last Friday, September 22nd. And I want to thank the Westham Island community for their patience, as this work was quite disruptive during its implementation. The remaining work on this project is to remove the temporary piles, and this is scheduled for November in recognition of the importance of the agricultural use for the bridge. Next slide, please. The Knight Street Bridge connects Vancouver with Mitchell Island and the rest of the city of Richmond. This is one of TransLink's busiest transportation assets. Traffic volumes regularly exceed 100,000 vehicles on a typical workday. This bridge is in generally good condition, and the projects that are underway now are intended to extend the life of the bridge and improve the quality of the experience for users of active modes. Next slide, please. In these images, you can see crews applying a polyester polymer concrete overlay. The purpose of this overlay is to extend the life of the bridge deck by preserving the underlying concrete and preventing corrosion from occurring in the rebar that reinforces the deck. This is, to our knowledge, the largest application of this overlay in British Columbia. This is a relatively new technology, although it's being widely used in other jurisdictions. And as part of this project, we're cooperating with Ministry of Transportation bridge engineers who are considering using a similar technology on bridges elsewhere in the province. Next slide, please. Another component of the work underway on the Knight Street Bridge is the installation of a railing that will improve the separation of the multi-use path on the side of the bridge from vehicle traffic. This railing was identified in a safety review and should improve the safety and comfort, particularly of cyclists that are crossing the bridge. You can also see that the work here is occurring overnight, and we've been able to maintain a single lane of traffic in each direction during all of the work, recognizing the importance of this connection. Next slide, please. The Golden Ears Bridge connects Pitt Meadows and Maple Ridge on the north side of the Fraser with Surrey and Langley on the south side. The bridge opened in 2008 and is operated under a concession model. In addition to the bridge river crossing, the project includes 19 kilometers of approach roads, and these approach roads were repaved this summer. Next slide, please. The pavement rehabilitation, it will extend the life of the pavement and ensure ride quality for users. TransLink's bridge operations team very closely monitors the work of our concessionaire to ensure that the bridge and its approach roads are returned to TransLink in good condition at the end of the concession period. And this is an example of the maintenance activities that are undertaken by the concessionaire at its own initiative to meet the availability targets for the bridge. And TransLink staff work very closely to ensure that the traffic impacts were minimized during the work. And so I'll thank you, and that concludes my my brief update on the bridge. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jeff, for that. You didn't cover the party at the Patella Bridge. What's going on with the party? I see that New West is planning a party. Are we part of the planning party?
Yes, so we're actually very excited about the replacement of the Patella Bridge, and TransLink's responsible for maintaining the existing structure until the traffic comes off. And then we'll hand the bridge over to the province, who will be responsible for its decommissioning. We did receive the City of New Westminster's request for a celebration to acknowledge the history of the bridge and its contribution to the region, and we'll be cooperating with the cities of New Westminster, Surrey, and the ministry to plan an event to mark that significant occasion.
Thanks, Jeff. So that kind of takes me to my next question, and that is about the West of Island Bridge and the age of the bridge and whether there's any intention and plans to replace it. I see in your report you talk about its useful life, but it's much older than the Patella Bridge. Doesn't see as much traffic, but I'm just wondering about what the long-term plans are for that bridge.
Yeah, so we do have an intention to replace that bridge. We completed an asset management plan for the West of Island Bridge almost 7 years ago now. We've been working through the implementation of that asset management plan. And what that plan intends to do is extend the life of the bridge. It's a really important connection for that community. To give us sufficient time to do the proper planning of a replacement. This planning process will be extensive. There are many open questions that need to be addressed through the planning process and extensive engagement with the community and Indigenous groups. And so our intention is to start some of that planning work in the coming years, but we expect to have the existing structure in place through the end of this decade.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Any other questions for Jeff in regards to his bridge report? Well, I appreciated receiving the report. We don't often see a comprehensive report like that. We talk about certain bridges at certain times, but I thought it was well done and it was helpful for us to kind of see the scope of all the bridges that we're responsible for. So thank you.
My pleasure.
All right, we're going to move to item number 12 on our agenda, which is our accessibility plan. I'm going to ask Sarah Ross to take the floor and present this for us. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Chair Cunningham. And Gigi and I are very pleased to be here to have this opportunity to present to you regarding our accessibility initiatives. If we can go to the next slide, please. So as you all know, TransLink is both a service provider and an employer. And when we think about accessibility, we think about how both the experience of taking transit can be more accessible, but also as well as how we as an employer can become a more accessible workplace. The Accessible British Columbia Act was passed in 2001. And the first regulation was enacted in September 2022. I said 2001, that's an error. It was passed in 2021. The regulation was enacted in 2022. And that regulation requires that TransLink, as a public sector organization, has initiatives in 3 areas and that they be in place by September 1st of this year. And I'm pleased to confirm that TransLink is in compliance with this regulation in all areas. Regarding accessibility committee, a requirement that you have an accessibility committee, we have the Access Transit Users Advisory Committee that was established in 2007 and meets 6 times a year to provide advice and input on a variety of TransLink initiatives from people with disabilities, seniors, and their advocates. And this committee, it carries on the legacy of a nonprofit advocacy group that was established actually in the early 1980s, Compact. And it's really their hard work way back then that led to some of the first accessibility features that continue on our system today. So we have a very strong tradition at TransLink of working with people with disabilities and advocates to learn from them and improve our system. In 2019, we established the HandyDart Users Advisory Committee so that we had a dedicated advisory committee of HandyDart customers and their advocates focused entirely on working with us to improve the experience of taking HandyDart. And on the employee side, this past spring, the Accessibility and Allies Employee Resource Group was established. That's our 6th employee resource group. And the aim of this is really to gather people with a diverse array of lived experience within the organization of employees, as it relates to disabilities, and to create a safe space for dialogue and involve that group as we advance equity, diversity and inclusion in the organization, and to provide advice on current and upcoming initiatives from an accessibility perspective. Another requirement is to have mechanisms for the public to provide feedback regarding accessibility. And TransLink has multiple channels for input from the public and from customers, including online feedback systems. We have phone line. Specifically for people with disabilities, there's a direct email address to the team in the Access Transit Planning Group. And finally, CMBC has the Access Transit Customer Care Group that supports HandyDart customers and includes receiving all complaints and commendations regarding HandyDart service, as well as some of our other accessibility programs. If we can go to the next slide, I'll move on to talk about our accessibility plan, which, as Kevin noticed, we're very pleased to have released that plan, which is the 3rd requirement of the regulations I mentioned. But plans for accessibility are not new to TransLink. This plan builds on our history and success in delivering accessible services and builds on our Transport 2050 vision of access for everyone. So this plan draws together commitments and actions regarding accessibility that are included in a number of other TransLink plans, particularly our long-range regional transportation strategy, as well as our Access for Everyone 10-year priorities plan, our customer experience action plan, our 2022 investment plan. This plan also speaks to our actions as an employer, drawing from our internal accessibility strategy. And then when we were developing this accessibility plan and pulling together all the accessibility related initiatives and commitments that exist in a variety of TransLink plans, we also wanted to make sure we hadn't missed anything. And we reviewed 4 years of minutes of the meetings of the Access Transit User Advisory Committee and the HandyDart Advisory Committee. If we can go to the next slide. So as Kevin mentioned, the resulting plan identifies 32 actions in the sections of transportation, information and communications, built environment, as well as service design and delivery. And for each of those actions, they're then identified. Are they near term, meaning they're underway, funded? Are they medium term, meaning that we've got them called out as actions we need to do, but may not be funded? Or are they ongoing initiative, things that don't have an end date that we're always continually working on? And so if we can go to the next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we worked with not only did we review the minutes of those committees, but we worked directly with the users advisory committees, provided them with a draft, got feedback on the draft, added some extra things, made some revisions. I think when you read the report, you'll notice how accessible the language of the plan is. And then that was an earlier draft feedback we got from the committee said, one of the things about accessibility is helping people understand what we're doing. And so that was a key part of this plan as well. We have lots of information on our website under our accessibility page. This plan is there. We welcome ongoing feedback, and we are committed to updating this, reviewing and updating the plan every 3 years. And that draws me to the end of my remarks. Gigi, who leads our accessibility initiatives on the internal side, and I are happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Karen.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sarah, for the report. Sarah, my question is about as we expand our transit system, and in particular, as we bring on new buses and new SkyTrain cars, I know that in the past, there's been a lot of emphasis on making the space inside the vehicles accessible for different kinds of things, whether it's strollers or wheelchairs or bicycles. But I also think there's a bit of a balance between making a vehicle accessible in that way and providing enough seating for those who may need to sit for longer transit rides. And they may not necessarily present as someone who has a physical constraint, but they may in fact be dissuaded from taking transit if they have a long ride and they're required to stand for most or all of that journey. So I do encourage you to think about that when you're thinking about accessibility, ensuring that the seating is adequate for the number of passengers that are likely to be in transit on that vehicle.
Thank you so much for that comment. And you're absolutely right. It's always trying to seek the right balance of recognizing that there is a big range of how people use our system and different levels of ability. And for example, if you are someone who uses a wheelchair, you want the vehicle to be wide open and lots of space to move around. If you are frail elderly, you want there to be lots of what we call stanchions, poles that you can hold on to and have a seat. And we have to always work with people to try to make sure we're finding that right balance so that everybody feels accommodated and is safe and comfortable on our system. You know, one of the things we're exploring regarding the seating is whether we should indicate the seats that should be reserved for people who have a higher need to sit down, with changing the fabric on the seats to make it more obvious. That's something some systems do, but there are other, we've also heard feedback that some people don't want to be sitting on a seat that's specially colored. So there's differing perspectives on that as we grapple through with that. I think also we really have to be mindful just overall on, no matter what we do, how we design the vehicles, if our system is very, very full and overcrowded, that has a particularly difficult impact on people with disabilities, seniors, people who are more at risk of falling, people who are using strollers, using wheelchairs. And I think that's another aspect that we have to think about, the impact on people with disabilities.
Thank you, Sarah.
Great, thank you. Sarah, it was mentioned earlier that we went on a tour with a few members of the Users Advisory Committee, and I just want to say how heartened it feels to see the collaborative work that's going on, and the perspective how heard the members of our community are that have these mobility challenges. So I just think that what you're doing on this work is so important, that you and Gigi are doing. And on that, I'm going to ask Gigi, because she has her hand up, to make a comment.
Thank you, Chair Cunningham. I just wanted to take this opportunity to publicly acknowledge Akansha Thakur, who is our EDI program manager, who co-led the efforts on the accessibility plan, leading on the internal side. She has done incredible work in this regard and has already advanced an accessibility policy, as well as a very detailed accessible communications guide, just as examples. And also to Stephanie Radivo, who is our director of EDI, who has been guiding this work. So thank you to both of them.
Great. Well, thank you to all of you that have been doing all this work, because I know it's very comprehensive and such important work for us to complete. So thank you. Thank you, Sarah, very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move to item number 13, which is the annual update on corporate safety and health policy. And I'm going to ask Dorrit Mason to make this presentation, and she's going to then take us into the next item as well. But we'll start with this one first, Dorrit.
Thank you. And I don't have a slide for this, but it is really, first of all, Chair Cunningham, thank you very much to you and the board to come here today and speak to this. The update of the TransLink corporate safety and health policy is we do this on an annual basis, and our focus really is to create a safe workplace. It is also a requirement under WorkSafe BC that we have this safe workplace as a priority. Each of the operating companies have their own safety policies. They update it. It's a best practice to update on an annual basis. And so the updates for this year are really formatting and restructuring to make it better readable, and also to continue to align to the enterprise safety commitment that is out there. And so with that, I would just like to put that to the board that we would like to make these updates to the TransLink corporate safety and health policy this year.
Thank you, Dorrit. So we all have a memo in the package. There is a resolution that goes with this memo, which I can read, that the board approves the amendments to the corporate safety and health policy as attached in attachment 2 to this report dated August 21st. So can I have a mover and a seconder for this resolution? Thank you, Alan. And thank you, Andy. So any questions, clarifications from Dorrit before we move for a vote on this? All right, well, seeing none then, all in favor? Thank you all very much. So Dorrit, thank you for the work on this. Although there were no questions, I know it went through other conversations during the committee. So thank you. And now you can move on to what this slide tells us, which is the emergency management program. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Chair Cunningham. And again, thank you to the board for letting me come to you today and give you an overview of emergency management here at TransLink. And if I could get you to take 3 thoughts away, the first one is that safety of our customers and our employees is paramount, and that underlies everything that we do, even when we respond to emergencies. The other is that the operating companies, they know their business well, they plan for emergencies, but we come together when an emergency happens so that we can actually coordinate and be more effective and serve the region. And ultimately, the third point is that our goal is a disaster resilient TransLink, because we want to be able to safely deliver our service during and after emergencies to the residents and the communities that we serve. Next slide, please. To focus our efforts, we actually do an assessment of hazards and risks that we have, and we update this on an annual basis. On the slide here, you can see our top 12. We will be doing a high-level review and update of this to capture more of the climate impact scenarios and hazards that are out there, such as extreme heat. But we really do look at these every year. We create plans around them, and we also have business continuity plans that are created. We need to make sure that when we have a disruption, we're able to continue delivering that safe service. And then we have an emergency coordination center with trained staff. We will activate that during an emergency. It really helps to coordinate our response, make sure that we're being as effective as possible and working together. If I could have the next slide, please. So when we are creating these plans, it's really important that we also train and exercise our staff. We have dedicated internal committees that look at aspects such as climate adaptation, the seismic work that's going out there, the resiliency, and what does that look like when in our Transport 2050 planning. When we are doing that training and exercising, we're coming together as an organization to focus our training, focus our exercising. And an example of that is this year we actually had in-person incident command system training. It's the standard or system that we're going to use during emergencies. And we had participation from SkyTrain, from the bus company, Transit Police, and also TransLink Corporate, because we want to make sure that our employees who are responding have that common knowledge. We also conduct exercises. Examples of that is BCRTC had a freshet flood tabletop exercise, security exercises happening through transit police. We had a C-bus exercise that the C-bus worked closely with the RCMP and transit police for a security exercise. On our IT side, we've done cybersecurity exercises. And at the TransLink corporate perspective, we've looked at our business continuity planning and conducted workshops on that. So we really do try to have training and then exercises that associate with that. We also know that communications is critical during emergencies. And we look at the technology that we have, and an example of us trying to create a redundancy was that after the Rogers outage, where we knew that we couldn't use our cell phones, we identified key critical staff that require immediate ability to communicate. And those key staff now have what are called dual SIM cards. So they have both a Rogers and a TELUS network capability on their phones. And so that's an example of us trying to make sure that after an emergency has initiated, we actually can have that communication occurring together. Finally, on this slide, the importance of reviewing what we've done. Every emergency is unique. No matter how we prepare for it, there are always nuances that end up happening. And so we review what ends up happening and take the lessons that are learned and incorporate them so that we can prepare for the future events that happen. Next slide, please. I wanted to focus on one program as an example of how we come together, and it is our Enterprise Integrated Security Program. It really focuses on our ability to come together, respond, and understand the responsibilities and roles of each of the operating companies. And this is in place every single day of the year. And also we do more planning when there are significant events. And you heard Deputy Chief Muir talk about the celebrations that are coming. And so we actually make sure that the plans are in place so that each of the operating companies knows their roles, comes together, and we have an effective response and enable a safe delivery of our service during these larger events. Next slide, please. We also work very closely with external partners. Disasters and emergencies don't stay in jurisdictional boundaries, and so it's really important that we are part of the region and that we actually plan together. And so we reach out to municipalities, provincial ministries, and other stakeholders to make sure that we understand what their plans are, what their expectations for TransLink to provide service, and how we can coordinate and work together. An example of this would be the Regional Emergency Planning Committee. We are members of this, and these are all of the emergency managers within local government and some of the other organizations such as Hydro and post-secondaries. We come together and talk about emergency management in this region. The other key part is the Integrated Partnership for Regional Emergency Management. That is actually an agreement between the province and Metro Vancouver, and we are ex officio members of that. And we are able to provide information on how we would support response and recovery through transportation, and also help to direct where we think important issues should be discussed. The picture that you have on the slide here is about snow and winter weather. We plan for winter weather, and it's an example, as Mike McDaniel had mentioned, we work very, very closely with local governments. Our service is only as good as the roads are clear. And so we have that planning. We're have a workshop next week specific on winter weather preparedness. But again, it is we deliver a service within a region, and we have to work together with our partners. Next slide, please. I also wanted to just give you a little bit of an overview of how we fit into the response and recovery structure. We are already part of this regional fabric. We also are part of the regional fabric when there's an emergency, and it goes all the way from an incident happening in our system in the field all the way up to the provincial government and the federal government if needed. We are nested within the response and recovery structure. The goals on the right, these are the 8 goals that you would see anywhere within the province, local government, provincial ministries. This is what our focus is. And you can see that the very top 4 are all about people. The safety of people is number one. And so we always make our decisions around how to protect people, and then we look at our infrastructure and other items. Next slide, please. TransLink, as I'd mentioned, is part of this fabric in this region. And that also means that we support our local governments. We provide shelter buses many times a year. And an example, this year we've had 28 different times that we have provided shelter buses to local governments from City of Vancouver, Burnaby, Surrey, Port Coquitlam, others, but we end up providing those for evacuees. And when our local governments and our first responders out there ask for help, we actually deliver and provide that support. During COVID, we also provided some buses to do vaccinations. And during that time, we helped to have 904 people vaccinated by actually having these buses located within local governments. Next slide, please. Safety is everyone's responsibility, and we also have a responsibility to be personally prepared. TransLink employees are we are public servants. And so there's this expectation that we're here to serve the communities when there is an emergency. So I just wanted to do a little bit of an idea that everyone needs to have some personal preparedness in their bailiwick as well. We do need to make sure that we're personally prepared and that we can respond when needed during an emergency. Next slide, please. And with that, just reiterating that our goal is to have a disaster resilient TransLink. We do that so that we have the ability to deliver a safe service to our region during and after emergencies. And we do it together with the operating companies so that we can provide that service. And with that, Chair Cunningham, I will turn it back to you, and I'm welcoming any questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Dorrit, for that. I just want to say, I see Andy has a question. So Andy, go ahead.
Comment first. Thank you, Dorrit, for that report. I think you can never over-prepare it, and there's always those unknowns. My question goes, at the high level there, a lot of the preparations in place. And I remember back in the 90s with the earthquake issues that was happening around there, there was every major company went into earthquake preparedness and got lockers prepared and drills prepared. And as it sort of fades into memory, I think those collected dust and was scrapped in certain places. My question to you is, how does this translate down? So if we were to have something like an earthquake, a major disaster area, having the plans in place for notification and responsibility of staff. So for every emergency bus, you need a driver available. In some of those cases, the logistics and pressures of families. So how does that drill down to the street level to enable these broader scope plans?
Thank you, Andy, for that question. It's a really important component. How do we make sure we can connect with our employees? First, to make sure that they're okay, and then second, to see if they can come into work. And we're in the process of looking at software as a service tools that we could pull off the shelf to actually communicate during an emergency situation with employees. Up until that point, though, each of the operating companies and the different divisions and departments typically have ways of communicating with their employees. It might be very difficult because it's a manual type process, but certainly that's the fallback that we have, but we are looking at a tool to make that more efficient.
If I could have a follow-up, Chair, is that okay?
Sure, that'd be great.
Yeah, I was talking to some people that were involved up in the interior in the wildfire stuff, and some unfortunately lost their homes and stuff, but they also lost the communication. Cell towers went down and things like this. So I'm assuming those communication strategies, not the internal ones, and you talked about the dual SIM cards, but to that further reach out, that plans would encompass communication methods when conventional communications has gone down as well.
Yes, of course, we will need to work closely with all sorts of partners. That includes the media as well, to get messaging out to the citizens or the residents in this region, as well as to our employees. We'll use whatever technology and tools we can, Andy, to communicate with our employees and our customers as well.
Thanks, Howard.
Dorit, I was going to, in your report, you have a range of hazards, top identified hazards, power outages, windstorms, et cetera, all the way down to earthquakes. And so you were talking earlier about tabletop exercises, and I assume that those kind of graduated events, some of them bigger and more substantial, but they still keep the team kind of tuned up for emergency preparedness. Is that a reasonable assumption?
Absolutely. And because we have the structure to respond to any emergency, we practice that structure. It could be an earthquake, it could be a power outage, it could be winter weather. Because we have the ability to respond to any of those, it really does help. It doesn't matter what the scenario is. We have this underlying structure to make us able to respond.
Great. And one kind of follow-up comment is that I appreciate your little reminder at the end about being prepared, because I, like Andy said, I have kits here, but they haven't been looked at for a while. So I know I need to get them out, review what's in there, and refresh the contents in them. So I appreciate that reminder. I see Director Reimer has a question.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just following up on Director Ross's line of questioning. And I guess I am, as a former city councilor in Vancouver, we went through this many times, this communications issue, because it does seem to be when you talk to, I mean, we did a lot of work directly with Christchurch, New Zealand to look at their aftermath and what had gone wrong and support them in their recovery, but also learn from the experience of the two earthquakes. And it did flag for me a bit that if we're relying on media, if people can't access mobile communications, they can't access media, because most people don't do that through traditional forms anymore. So wondering if we've sort of drilled down another level on that and what the sort of analog communications might look like. And noting that one of the first things to go in a disaster is credible information, and misinformation can become quite dangerous for people.
Yeah, thank you. Really great comment. Communications is always the bane of any emergency. There's always failures that happen. And when the technology fails, you're absolutely right. You need to get into more of that analog posted information. That is one of the areas that I'm working with the communications team to develop that crisis communications plan. What does that look like? Certainly, I think our system could be used for poster boards, similar to what they did in New Zealand, where they had boards up where you could put documented information. So certainly something for us to look into.
Great, thank you.
Great, Andrea, thank you very much. So I don't see any further questions on that, Dorit. So again, we appreciate the presentation and the information. Appreciate all the work that you continue to do. This is something that can easily kind of, not rise up to the most important thing on your desk in the scope of things, but when you need it, it's so important to have it all prepared as you are. So appreciate all the work.
Thank you. And if I may just say, it is a work that is being done by many different people throughout the organization. I'm just the talking head at this point, but there are many, many people behind that are working on this to make the organization resilient. So thank you. And I will let them know your comments.
Please do. Yeah, please do. And thank them very much for all their dedication to this important initiative.
Thank you.
All right, so thank you, Dorit. So the next two items are the consent agenda and the conclusion of our meeting. So can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Thank you, Andy, and Alan, thank you for your second, and all in favor? The consent agenda, thank you. And a motion to adjourn the meeting, because this concludes all the work that we have. Thank you, Andy. And a seconder, thank you, and all in favor? So that concludes our September meeting. Thank you to everyone who has joined in to participate and listen to our meeting today, and for the presenters that came earlier in the delegation section. So that adjourns our